Al Capone, also known by the nickname Scarface, is one of America's most famous gangsters back during the Prohibition era. This rich and powerful businessman, as he called himself, was also the boss of the Chicago Outfit, aka the Chicago Mob. Al Capone reigned supreme for 7 long years before the US government finally took him down. It wasn't for his crimes of extortion, murder, robbery, or bootlegging that took him down. It was tax evasion. In 1931, Al Capone was convicted and sentenced to 11 years in prison, but he was only imprisoned for 8 years. Here is where the Mandela effect comes in. What happened to Al Capone? It's a widely known fact today that when he entered prison, he had syphilis, which remained untreated for the vast majority of his stay. By the end of his life, he was actually diagnosed as having the mental age of a 12-year-old. So tell me, where did Al Capone die? Was it in Alcatraz prison? Or was it in his home in Florida? I am one of the many people who were taught that Al Capone had died in prison. Well, it turns out, after 8 years of incarceration, he was paroled in 1939, and he actually lived on for 8 more years after his prison sentence. What did you remember? And get this, Al Capone spent his last years of his life at his mansion in Palm Island, Florida, spending time with his wife and grandchildren. Then, because of complications of syphilis, he eventually suffered, yet survived a stroke, but then not long after, he died of cardiac arrest. This timeline is drastically different than the one that I remember learning about and studying growing up. So what about you? Do you remember Al Capone dying in prison, or dying 8 years later surrounded by his family and loved ones?